Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Brian Stutland, Chief Investment Officer at Equity Armor Investments. We're going to take a look at the seasonal trade around midterm elections. Brian, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. What type of patterns can investors expect to see based on historical performance around the midterm election?
Well, when you take a look at the markets during that time, Jill, what we typically see is July creates a bit of a sell-off as we head into the midterm elections, and we usually get a pretty significant volatility spike, seeing something like a vol Q spike. Now, obviously, this goes back almost to basically 2002, where we've seen this typical pattern. Then what typically happens after that is the market sort of stabilizes, attempts to rally, and then come October, we see another sell-off just with a little less volatility occurring during that sell-off, trying to retest those bottoms before ultimately the market can move higher. So, that's something really to keep an eye on as we head into this election time in November.
Right, and speaking of October, we know it's going to be a heavy time for earnings, and we saw what happened with this quarter where there was concern, which was reflected in stock prices with guidance going forward. We're going to start to hear more about that as we will be looking at, what the second quarter had produced.
Yeah, I mean, we will, Jill. And we already maybe got some indication from Microsoft earlier today. Now, they basically indicated that it was a currency issue that might cause some shortfall in earnings. And, we own Microsoft in our Nasdaq fund that we are portfolio managers of. So, I still like the stock. But when you take a look at that, obviously, if the earnings picture is not so great, some levels in the Nasdaq that I'm looking for, whether we get this volatility spike or not that we typically see in midterm elections, is that 11,800 level in the NASDAQ. And if we start to see some of these earnings pictures sort of shortfall like Microsoft indicated, and to your point, July, October, those are when we do get those earnings coming out of typical big, huge, large cap NASDAQ names, end of July, end of October, we could see those sell-offs again. So watch that 11,800 level. I think any break below there, I know it's still a few percent away now at this point, but any break below there is probably going to freak out traders because I think there was a lot of buyers that came in around that level.
Right. And speaking of buyers, we have the Nasdaq 100 up over 2% today, outperforming the other averages. Is it still volatility? Is that still the expectation that you have? Is this kind of we haven't seen the market really string together any positive days?
Yeah, it's been a very tough run and tough sled so far this year. But I think when you look at the Nasdaq, underperforming, let's call it large cap value stocks by 20%. I think more and more investors are starting to say, okay, there's been a significant discount now in PEs, in valuations. I still believe maybe there's still a little bit more to go on this if the Fed still stays in the aggressive mode of raising rates. But I think some investors, at least, and I think this is why you're seeing the recent rally, is saying, hey, look, there's such a huge spread between these two groups of stocks, then maybe now's the time to take a chance to step in and buy some of those NASDAQ growthy kind of names at this level. But, just be again, a little careful. Watch that 11,800 level.
All right, Brian, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.